The split-flap departure board clattered above the platform, each tile snapping into place like a row of tiny shutters. Dell. Track fault. A woman in a cream-wrapped top stood beneath it with a silver suitcase beside her and a corroded pocket watch clenched in one hand. Everything about her looked controlled, except the pressure of her thumb against the domed crystal. If you press any harder, that glass will fracture inward, I said. She turned. Her brown eyes were clear but tired. The kind of tired that survived good posture and expensive fabric. It already doesn't work, she said. The crystal can still make things worse. If it breaks, the shards will foul the hands and scar the dial. Her grip loosened. You know what this is? A quarter repeater from the early 20th century. I kept my hands at my sides. May I look without touching it? She hesitated, then opened her palm. The case was tarnished silver with an engine turned back. The crystal had deep surface scratches, but no radial crack yet. Through my loop, I could see the minute hand sitting too low and a slight drag mark near the center post. Turn it over, I said. She did. The back cover lifted under the edge of my shaped thumbnail. I stopped before opening it fully. Do I have your permission? Yes. The movement beneath was dark with old oil. The balance wheel did not move. The crown showed fresh scoring around the stem. Someone forced it after it resisted, I said. Her jaw tightened. My stepbrother wound it yesterday. Did he stop when it locked? He said old watches need persuasion. They don't. The board clacked again. Service suspended. Expected reopening tomorrow. A groan passed through the passengers around us. The woman looked from the empty track to the watch. My name is Claire Adams, she said. I have an independent appraisal at 9 tomorrow morning. If this watch is not functional and properly documented, the trust's solvency schedule drops below the minimum value required to prevent an estate sale. That was a real constraint, not sentiment dressed as urgency. She continued before I could ask. The serial number also matches a notarized debt release record in my father's archive. The record proves an old estate obligation was satisfied, but the trust lists the watch at its insured working value. Elias controls the trust as executor. He invoked the accelerated valuation clause this morning. Elias is your stepbrother. Yes. And he wound the watch after moving the deadline. Her thumb found the side of her index finger and tapped once against a narrow silver scar. He says he was checking whether it ran. The watch had not merely failed. Someone had forced a vulnerable mechanism at the exact moment its condition could change control of an estate. That made it my problem before I knew anything else about her. I'm Colton Ruiz. I said, Master Watchmaker. Her eyes shifted to my work boots, then back to my face. The retired specialist in the city? Not me. The one 3 states over? Also not me. Then why haven't I heard your name? I repair more than I advertise. The station speakers crackled. Passengers began collecting their bags. Claire closed the watch and held it against her palm. Can you fix it? Not fully by tomorrow. A proper restoration could take weeks. The hope left her face without drama. Her shoulders lowered, and she folded the appraisal notice into a smaller square. What can you do? Emergency stabilization. Free the escapement. Clean only what is necessary. Replace any failed retaining part. Restore the repeater. And document rate and amplitude. Enough for a mechanical valuation if the movement is otherwise sound. And if it isn't, then I stop before I damage something irreplaceable. That doesn't save the estate. No, it protects the watch. She looked at me as though I had confirmed what she feared. You're protecting your reputation. I'm protecting the mechanism. Elias is counting on careful people moving slower than he does. The accusation landed because part of it was true. I did not take rushed repairs. My rule existed because deadlines made people reckless, and reckless hands turned recoverable damage into permanent loss. But the crown stem showed fresh scoring. Someone had already rushed this watch. My workshop is 15 minutes away. I said, I can perform a documented assessment under continuous chain of custody. I won't promise a working watch until I know the condition. Claire looked toward the station entrance. My attorney filed for an emergency standstill before I boarded. The court will not hear it until morning. Who is the attorney? Mara Ellison. She is also the trust's independent co-trustee. That helps. It helps only if I can provide the appraisal. I nodded toward the watch. You stay with it. We photograph every surface, record the serial number, sign an emergency conservation authorization, number every parts tray, and keep the bench under continuous video. You can stop the work at any point. And the fee? Deferred standard rate. No emergency premium unless your attorney approves it in writing. Claire studied me. No favor? No debt except the invoice. The board clattered again over us. Tomorrow remained fixed in black and white. Claire picked up her suitcase. Show me the workshop. I did not reach for her luggage until I asked, May I carry that? She nodded. The suitcase was heavier than it looked. My workshop occupied a converted carriage house beyond a line of old oaks. The front room held 2 benches, a jeweler's lathe, a timing machine, a staking set, and labeled drawers of raw brass stock. A grandfather clock stood in the corner, its pendulum measuring the room with a calm I trusted more than digital displays. Claire stopped just inside. The air smelled of wood, solvent, and metal polish. Green mat, I said. Place the watch in the center. She set it down herself. I turned on the overhead camera and pointed to the monitor. Continuous recording starts now. Mara Ellison, joined by video from her office. She wore reading glasses and spoke with the clipped patience of someone already preparing 3 legal arguments at once. Claire, the court clerk accepted our standstill application. Mara said, Until 8 tomorrow morning. Elias cannot execute a sale contract. He may proceed with the scheduled valuation under the trust clause. So 8 is real. Claire says, It is, I need the serial number, condition report, and chain of custody packet before 6. I position the condition light over the green mat. Claire signed the emergency conservation authorization. I signed beneath her. We photographed the case, dial, crystal, crown, hinges, and serial number. Mara countersigned the intake form electronically. I labeled 6 trays. Case, dial, and hands. Gear train. Escapement. Repeater. Remed material. Claire watched every label. If you want me to stop, say stop. I told her, Will you? Yes. Even if it means Elias wins? Yes. Her expression closed. That answer is not reassuring. It is the only answer that keeps your watch safe. She folded her arms, then began. I opened the case under camera. The damage was narrower than a full overhaul and more dangerous than a simple jam. The pallet fork had shifted. The hairspring was tangled near the regulator. The mainspring click showed fresh deformation from forced winding. A proper restoration still needed time. A stabilization might be possible. I called my retired mentor, Silas Quinn. He answered from his kitchen with a cup of tea in one hand and suspicion in his voice. You do not call after noon unless something is broken or someone is lying. Quarter repeater, circa 1912. Forced crown. Displaced pallet fork. Tangled hairspring. Emergency valuation tomorrow. No, I haven't asked the question. You are about to compress a full restoration into one night. Stabilization only. Silas leaned toward the screen while I showed him the movement. Do not clean the full train, he said. Remove the obstruction. Inspect the pivots. Clean the escapement and repeater contact surfaces. Then test. If amplitude is unstable, you stop. I know. You know many things and still call me. Claire stood just outside the camera frame. Silas noticed her reflection in the monitor. Owner present? Yes. Good. Make her sign the stop condition. She already did. Silas nodded once. Send me timing traces before you seal the case. The first 2 hours passed under the grandfather clock. I removed the hands with a puller and placed them in their numbered tray. The dial lifted cleanly. Beneath it, old dust had gathered near the cannon pinion, but there was no rust. Claire sat on the stool beside mine. She did not check her phone until Mara called. She did not pace. Whenever my tweezers moved near the hairspring, her thumbnail tapped against the scar on her finger. At one point, I reached for a bridge screw and found her hand hovering near the edge of the mat. She withdrew it at once. "Sorry, you didn't touch anything." "I almost did." "You stopped." The distinction mattered. By late afternoon, my shoulders had tightened. Claire's eyes had gone red from staring into the bench light. I stood without speaking and brewed black coffee in the small kitchenette. 2 mug. I placed one beside her elbow before she asked. She wrapped both hands around it. "No sugar?" she asked. "You didn't put sugar in the station coffee." "I never had station coffee." "You looked at the machine and rejected it." Her mouth curved. "That is an alarming amount of observation. It is occupational." She tasted the coffee and winced. "This could clean watch parts." "The ultrasonic tank costs more." The small laugh that escaped her changed the room. When the critical parts were ready for cleaning, I loaded them into a mesh basket and lowered them into the ultrasonic tank. The high hum filled the workshop. Claire looked at the raw brass rods arranged beside the lathe. "What are those for?" "Making parts no one sells." "You expect to need them?" "I expect old machines to refuse easy solutions." The grandfather clock struck 6. Mara called again. "The standstill remains in effect," she said. "I also found the trust schedule. Elias can accelerate the appraisal only if he provides written notice 12 hours before the original appointment." "When did he send it?" Claire asked. 7:20 this morning. That allows an 8 a.m. valuation tomorrow. He cannot move it earlier without court approval. One fixed boundary. I said. Mara's attention shifted to me. "Mr. Ruiz, I need your preliminary condition report." I sent the signed PDF with intake photographs and serial verification. The serial matches the notarized debt release record. Mara said, "That protects provenance. Your mechanical report will support valuation." Separate questions, separate evidence. Claire looked at me. That was the first time all day the legal structure sounded stronger than Elias. Mara continued. "I'm also drafting a petition to suspend Elias as executor for self-dealing and evidence interference. The forced winding matters if you can document it." "I can document scoring and deformation," I said. "I cannot state who caused it without a witness." Claire witnessed him handling it. "I did," she said. Mara nodded. "Then record a declaration before midnight." The ultrasonic cycle ended. A new loop opened. We had legal time, but the mechanism still had to survive. At 8, I reassembled the critical train and seated the pallet fork. The movement began to release power, but the balance remained unstable. Claire watched the timing screen. The trace broke into scattered dots. "Is that bad?" "It means the beat is irregular." "Can you correct it?" "Maybe." The word frustrated her. She stood and crossed to the front window. "Elias never says maybe. That is why he breaks things." She turned, "And you hide behind caution." The grandfather clock ticked between us. "I am not hiding. You refuse to promise anything because then no one can say you failed." The tweezers remained in my hand. She had found the weak point faster than most people did. My reputation is built on knowing when to stop. Mine will disappear if you stop too early. That does not give either of us permission to damage the watch. Claire's hand closed around the edge of the work table. "I am not asking you to be reckless. You are asking me to work as though the estate matters more than the mechanism. It matters more to me." "I know." "Do you?" The ultrasonic fluid still vibrated faintly in its tank. Coffee cooled beside her stool. I set the tweezers down. "When this is over, would you let me buy you breakfast?" Claire looked at the disassembled movement. "Ask me when it's ticking." Not yes, not no. A boundary and a promise hidden in the same sentence. I nodded. "Then sit down. I need you to trust the method." She returned to the stool, The room softened by 1 degree. At 10:30, the repeater train chimed for the first time. The sound was weak but clean. Claire's head lifted. I did not smile. The rate still wandered. Silas reviewed the video feed and timing trace. Escapement is releasing. He said amplitude is low but improving. Check the hairspring stud. Under magnification, the retaining taper pin showed a dark line near its narrow end. Corrosion. I touched it with the side of a probe. The pin crumbled. Claire saw my hand stop. What happened? The hairspring pin failed. Can you replace it? I can make one. How long? An hour if the first attempt holds. Her phone vibrated. Elias. She answered on speaker after Mara joined the call. Claire. Elias said. The appraiser's flight changed. He is leaving at noon. The appointment is now 8. If you are absent or the watch is non-functional, I will execute the liquidation filing by 8:30. Mara's voice cut in. You already set the appointment for 8 in compliance with the trust clause. Any filing before the court reviews our standstill extension will be challenged. Elias gave a low laugh. You can challenge it after the developers sign. You do not have authority to sign while the standstill is active. That expires at 8. The line went dead. Claire stared at the phone. Then she reached for the watch case. Stop. I put my hand over the numbered tray, not over hers. No. You said I could stop the repair. You can, but do not end it, because Elias raised his voice. I am not risking your certification on a part made at midnight. That decision belongs to my certification. And if the part fails, then I document the failure, and we go to court without a working movement. Her eyes brightened. You are exhausting yourself for a house you have never seen. You are surrendering because Elias changed the pressure again. The word struck hard. Claire stepped back. Silence filled the workshop, except for the grandfather clock. I had crossed from professional restraint into accusation. Mara remained on the call. Both of you stop, she said. Claire, the legal next step is clear. Record your declaration about the forced winding. Colton, state the repair limit. I looked at the broken pin. 1 fabricated taper pin. 1 test cycle. If rate or amplitude remains unstable after installation, I stop. Claire wiped one thumb over the silver scar on her finger. And if it holds, we seal the movement, generate the report, and leave at 5:20. For what train? I checked the railway app. Service still showed suspended. None yet. Then we drive. 2 hours in clear traffic, longer after 6. Mara interrupted. The rail authority posted a maintenance update. Emergency service decision expected at 5:35. A narrow path. Not a promise. Claire looked at me. 1 pin, she said. 1 test cycle. I trust your stop condition. That was not surrender. It was choice. I moved to the lathe. Raw brass stock waited in the rack, already visible from the first hour. I selected the closest diameter, secured it in the collet, and brought the graver to the spinning metal. The motor whined. A ribbon of brass curled away, thin as thread. Claire recorded her sworn declaration with Mara while I worked. Her voice stayed steady. She described Elias taking the watch, forcing the crown after resistance, and returning it without disclosing damage. When she finished, she did not pace. She stood behind the yellow line I had taped on the floor and watched. The first pin was too narrow. It slipped in the stud hole. I placed it in the removed material tray and started again. Claire looked at the wall clock. 4:46. The grandfather clock ticked. Not hurried, not forgiving. The second pin seated at 5:02. I aligned the terminal curve, secured the hairspring, and installed the balance bridge. 3 turns of the crown delivered power. The balance wheel moved. Tick, tick, tick. Claire covered her mouth but did not speak. I placed the movement on the timing machine. The trace began uneven, then narrowed. Rate plus 18 seconds per day. Amplitude, 212 degrees. Beat error, 0.8 milliseconds. Emergency stable. Not restored. Appraisable. I sent the trace to Silas. He called at once. I reviewed the live test, he said. Stable across dial-up and pendant-up positions. Do not promise long-term service. Seal it. Document the limitations. And perform a full restoration after the legal hearing. Will you countersign? The report is in your email. Claire closed her eyes for one breath. A named second master. A verified result. We sealed the movement, reinstalled the dial and hands, and tested the repeater. The watch struck 5 with 5 clear notes, followed by 1 double chime for the quarter. Mara received the diagnostic log, Silas's verification, the timing trace, and the full custody packet at 5:14. The railway app refreshed. Emergency service reopening 5:35. I looked at Claire. Coat. She was already pulling the wool blanket from her shoulders and folding it across the stool. You kept that on me all night? You were cold. You could have told me. You were asleep. We left the workshop at 5:20. The station parking lot came into view at 5:34. The split flap board clattered as we ran onto the platform. Boarding, 5:45 Express. The same sound that had stranded Claire now opened a route in front of us. She held the watch inside a padded custody pouch attached to her wrist. I carried the signed packet in my tool case. The conductor checked our tickets as the doors chimed. We boarded with less than a minute left. The train pulled away at 5:46. Claire sat beside me, the wool blanket folded between us because she had carried it out without thinking. You stole my blanket, I said. I preserved evidence. Of what? That your workshop is colder than you admit. A laugh caught me off guard. She looked toward the window. Sunrise moved across the tracks. At 7:40, the train entered the city. We reached Ashford Valuation at 7:55. Mara waited in the lobby with a court-stamped extension of the standstill and a binder of trust records. You made it, she said. Claire handed her the custody packet. Every transfer is signed. Mara checked the seal on the watch pouch. Good. Elias is upstairs with the appraiser. The elevator opened onto the 10th floor at 7:58. Elias stood at the head of a mahogany conference table. Beside him sat Dr. Evelyn Hartwell, an independent horological appraiser with silver hair and the loop suspended on a black cord. Elias looked at my work jacket and tool case. Who are you, and what authority do you have here? Colton Ruiz. Master certification number R1846. I performed the emergency stabilization. Elias looked at Claire. You let a stranger dismantle trust property? Claire placed the sealed custody pouch on the table. I authorized documented conservation under continuous video. Mara countersigned as co-trustee. Mara opened the binder. Serial number intake. Condition photographs. Numbered trade log. Continuous timestamps. Diagnostic report. Second master verification. And Claire's declaration regarding the forced crown. Elias's face tightened. Doctor, Hartwell examined the seals before opening the pouch. She matched the serial number to the notarized debt release record. Then she inspected the case. Dial, movement, and repair log. Mechanical condition and provenance are separate, she said. The serial number supports the archive record. The watch's function determines its current insured value. She wound it twice. The balance started. The room filled with a small, even tick. Elias reached toward the watch. Doctor, Hartwell raised one hand. Do not touch it during examination. He stopped. She activated the repeater slide. The hour sounded, followed by the quarter. Then she connected the movement to her timing equipment and compared the reading to mine. Stable enough for appraisal, she said. Emergency stabilization is disclosed. Full restoration is still required, but the insured working value remains above the trust threshold. Mara slid the solvency schedule across the table. With the verified watch value and debt release record, the estate remains solvent. The liquidation clause cannot be triggered. Elias looked at Claire. This changes nothing. I can still petition for sale in the estate's interest. Mara placed the court order beside his hand. The judge extended the standstill for 30 days and scheduled an executor removal hearing. Your written acceleration, the forced winding, and the developer option you signed before valuation are all part of the petition. That was the missing practical consequence. Not one chime solving everything. Skill, records, and legal process meeting in the same room. Doctor, Hartwell signed the valuation. The watch is stable, functional, and appraisable, she said. Mr. Ruiz's documentation is exemplary. Elias left without taking the trust binder. Claire remained standing until the door closed. Then she removed the liquidation notice from her folder, folded it once, and placed it beneath the signed valuation. Mara touched her shoulder. I'll file the cancellation and preservation orders. Go breathe somewhere without attorneys. Claire looked at me. The invoice, she said. Later. No, properly. Mara glanced between us. I'll hold the repair funds in trust once Colton sends the standard invoice. Any donation to the future museum can be documented after payment. Clean separation. No emotional debt. We returned to the station with 20 minutes before my outbound train. The platform was brighter now. Commuters moved around us with coffee and briefcases. Claire's suitcase stood beside her. The restored watch rested in its padded pouch inside her bag. The departure board clattered. On time, track 6. The sound no longer felt like a threat. Claire removed a pen from her purse. Send the invoice to Mara, she said. Standard rate, materials, and the documented emergency hours. I will. And the full restoration? After the executor hearing, when the watch can stay in my workshop longer than one night. She smiled. I adjusted the loose clasp on her luggage tag before I knew I was doing it. Claire noted, you fix things when you don't know what to say. The clasp was failing. Of course. The board changed above us. Boarding in 10 minutes. I looked at her. What I asked next has nothing to do with the invoice. I know. In the workshop, I asked whether you would let me buy you breakfast. You asked while the movement was in 6 trays. You told me to ask when it was ticking. Claire's smile softened. If you had asked earlier, I would have said yes. I held her gaze. What about now? The board clattered again. Boarding. Claire closed the distance between us and held out her hand. Now I'm saying yes to breakfast, a real one. And if that goes well, dinner. I took her hand. Her grip was warm and certain. My train waited with its doors open. I did not move. You'll miss it, she said. There is another at 11. You checked? I repair clocks for a living. She laughed and kept holding my hand. Breakfast lasted until the 11 o'clock train became the 1:30. We did not call it a date until Claire paid the emergency invoice through Mara's trust account and received the final receipt. That separation mattered to both of us. 3 weeks later, I attended the executor hearing as a technical witness. Silas appeared by video to confirm that the overnight work had been limited to stabilization and that the later restoration followed ordinary conservation standards. Dr. Hartwell submitted the final insured valuation. Mara produced Elias's developer option, signed before he had disclosed the estate's verified assets. The judge suspended him that afternoon. Outside the courthouse, Claire did not celebrate. She opened a folder containing the first draft of a preservation trust plan and asked whether I would review the horology section. As your watchmaker? I asked. As the man who knows which promises should be written down. I took the folder. The next 11 weeks unfolded at a pace I trusted. Claire brought the watch to the workshop under a new custody agreement every Monday morning and collected it every Friday. Sometimes she stayed for coffee. Sometimes she corrected archive labels at the oak desk while I worked. On our 4th dinner, I caught myself straightening a crooked candle holder instead of answering her question about whether I was happy. She turned it crooked again. Answer first, she said. So I did. 6 months later, the Adams Estate Museum opened to the public. The court had permanently canceled the sale order. Elias was removed as executor after the trust hearing and lost the development option he had negotiated without co-trustee approval. The estate's taxes and remaining debt were covered through a preservation grant, a limited archive endowment, and ticketed public programming. Claire chaired the museum trust. I served as conservation partner under a written agreement reviewed by Mara and my own counsel. My emergency invoice had been paid in full. I later donated part of the fee to establish the museum's first horology exhibit. The full restoration of the quarter repeater took 11 weeks. No shortcuts. At the museum entrance, a restored split-flat board from the old station hung above the reception desk. I had rebuilt its drive motor and replaced 23 worn tiles. When the opening ceremony began, the board clattered. "Welcome. On time." Guests looked up and applauded. The same mechanical cascade that had once announced delay now marked safe arrival. Claire stood beside the display case in a cream jacket. Her father's photograph rested behind the restored watch, and the notarized debt release record sat beneath it. Mara spoke first about the Preservation Trust. Dr. Hartwell explained the valuation history. Silas stood near the back and complained that the display lighting was too warm by half a degree. Then Claire took the microphone. This museum exists because careful people refuse to confuse urgency with permission to be reckless. She said. Her eyes found mine. Colton Ruiz is the estate's conservation partner. She paused. And, since he still adjusts every loose clasp before answering a personal question, he is also my partner outside the workshop. The room laughed. I stepped beside her. Public choice. No contract hidden beneath it. After the guests moved into the gallery, Claire led me through a side door into the restored carriage house office attached to the museum. Her oak desk stood opposite my conservation bench. The green work mat remained beneath my tools. The grandfather clock had moved from my old workshop and ticked beside the window. The wool blanket rested over the back of Claire's chair. "You brought that too?" I asked. "It is part of the chain of custody." On the shelf above my precision tools, she placed her father's framed photograph. Then she set down 2 mugs of black coffee. "You still take yours without sugar," she said. "You still pretend yours is black until bad news. I use cream by choice now. A small domestic correction. A life built from them." Claire had kept her apartment in the city for work, and I kept the carriage house for restoration projects. But this office belonged to both of us by decision, not assumption. 3 nights a week, she stayed at the estate. On weekends, I took the later train back with her. The museum board clattered in the front hall. On time. Claire reached for my hand. I looked once at the restored watch beneath glass, then at the board above the entrance. For once, I let the mechanism keep time without checking it. The end. Closing thoughts. Core lesson. Trust grows when skill, honesty, and patience protect what matters without taking away another person's choice. Green flag. Healthy love respects boundaries, separates professional help from emotional obligation, and proves reliability through consistent action rather than pressure. Please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like this.